Welcome back to the nationally syndicated Price of Business show. Always love talking to Chris Kidd. We call him the money man around here. He is a recurring contributor on the Price of Business, always bringing us important and valuable content to every single interview we have. And Chris, you've been with us on and off for years, and always enjoy chatting with you. Before we get into our topic, kind of tell us exactly what you do for people.
Well, the short version is I help people with money issues. I don't want to say problems because it's not necessarily a problem, but I help people be better with their money, how to basically make their money work harder for them. Sometimes people come to me. In fact, I've gotten several messages lately on people who say, hey, I make good money. I make six figures, but I really don't have much to show for it. I really need some help because I feel like I should be further along in life than I am, and it seems like I'm just spending all that I make. So that's one of the other issues that I deal with. But basically, I got this, I guess I would say, drive to work with people to help them with their finances, because that's one of the number one things that leads to divorce is financial problems, and I don't like seeing families broken up and what it does to kids and stuff like that. So I figured I could help
absolutely.
Solve a lot of those issues.
Yeah, no question about it. And it's a great segue to our topic today, which is how to become a millionaire. Regardless of your age, and this advice will be sage advice for those who are pushing retirement and woke up one day and say, hey, wait a minute, I ain't got nothing to retire on, to the young adult who's like, hey, I'm finally getting some tools, where I could make a decent living. It doesn't matter where you are in that scale. This advice can help. And I think part of your passion, because I've known you for years, Chris, is your own personal story. You came across someone, there's nothing about your family of origin that would make you financially successful, from what I've gathered in the time I've known you. And you stumbled on someone, you connected with someone who became a phenomenal mentor to you and gave you those tools. And when people get that in life, they want to share that with others. And I think that's part of your story.
Yeah, that's definitely a huge part of my story, because like you said, I didn't come from a poor family. I came from just an average family, middle class, like most people, and I didn't know how to think as far as being a millionaire for sure. It was something that was for other people, and I had some things happen in my life that took me down a road that opened my eyes to different things, and I started learning to think differently, and next thing you knew, I was a millionaire at 24. I cut out a whole bunch of stuff in there, but yeah. Yeah,
absolutely. So kind of give me the landscape of what that path looks like from, man, I'm not sure exactly what I'm doing, or even utter failure and floundering, to actually getting on a path towards becoming a millionaire. Talk a little bit about that, what you've observed.
I would say absolutely the very first step begins in your mind. It starts all in your head. It really sounds kind of like a cliche type thing to say, and people hate when they're told that, because they want to, like, give me the nuts and bolts. What do I need to do? But it's not what you need to do. It's who you need to become and how you need to think. And then you start seeing things differently, and things just happen differently. Like you'd mentioned before, when I was 19, I met a very young multimillionaire. He was about 30, and he kind of took me under his wing and said, if you will listen to what I'm teaching you, and change some things, you could be a millionaire by the time you're 30. And like I said a little while ago, I did it by the time at 24. One of the first things that he said is, what are you reading? And I said, well, read. I listen to music. I don't have time to read. I hate reading. In fact, I read 2 books in my entire high school, I say career, whatever, my entire time in high school. One was Brian's song about Brian Piccolo, because I've always, grown up around sports. I love the topic. And it was a short book. I read that one, and I read Friday Night Lights. And it took me 2 or 3 years to read Friday Night Lights.
Wow.
Since then, I've read probably hundreds or thousands of books. I've written a book. I've co-authored books. I read over 100 books last year. So, yeah, I changed the input. But he asked me, well, for $500,000 a year, would you read? And I said, yeah, of course. He said, well, you'll never get there if you don't start reading now. He said, start with this book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which was authored by Robert Kiyosaki, who I know you've had on the show a handful of times.
Several
That's one I
times.
recommend. And his book, The Cash Flow Quadrant.
Yeah, which is even better than Rich Dad, Poor Dad, in my opinion. It's much more, this is how to do it. This is how it looks in reality. Cash Flow Quadrant is kind of trying to get buy-in for someone who doesn't think that way. And the Cash Flow Quadrant assumes you get it. That's why it's important to read them in the exact same order that you mentioned. But go right ahead. Yes, those are two pivotal books. I put it up there with 4-Hour Work Week, among the books you need if you want to develop new rich thinking, which means you let your systems do a lot of the work for you. Anyway, go ahead.
But yeah, so that was the first thing that I learned was the thinking differently about money and how I make money, how I handle money. And, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the thing that was so impactful there was like chapter 2 broke my brain. Where I don't want to give it away, but if somebody reads that book and they get past chapter 2, they're not going to put it down. That one messed me up permanently. And of course, I was young and very influential influenceable at the time. And then the Cash Flow Quadrant, I learned things in there that made me just completely change the way that I looked at making money. I've never had a job since I was 20 years old. That was the last time that I had worked for anybody else. I decided I would not work for anybody else, and I would not spend a dollar that did not come back to me somehow or take me forward to where I wanted to be in my future. And one of the first things that I tell my clients to do, like anytime somebody says, can you help me? Okay, step number 1, I'll work with you after you complete this task. Step number 1, for the next 30 days, you're going to track every penny you spend, and you're going to account for it at the end. I want to see what your income was, what your expenses were, and it needs to add up at the end. We're going to figure out where your money's going. And a lot of times it's just being spent on, stupid crap. A bunch of stuff it's stupid because it's not taking us closer to our goal, which is
right.
Another big point is you got to decide what it is that you actually want. Where do you want to be? And how important is that to you? Because a lot of people, they would like stuff, but they do not want something and have the drive to go pursue it enough. If I can.
And by the way, the big issue there is even more than having, knowing what's growing and maybe even having a little bit of remorse about how you're using your money. It gathers that. But I think one of the biggest reasons why people don't gather steam financially is vagueness around money. And what you're talking about is, that just gives you so much clarity.
Yeah, and then the other thing, because a lot of people ask, well, you did all this crazy, you sacrificed or made the investment of doing things differently, and you had this really crazy diet of ramen noodles and dollar pizzas and drinking nothing but water and for like a year and a half, 2 years. Lived like super cheap because I was putting everything that I could towards my future. They're like, how could you do that? Most people won't make those sacrifices because of one thing, and it's called belief. Most people don't believe that if they give stuff up, then they will do it. If I told somebody right now, hey, I'm going to meet you in Austin, Texas, and we're here in Houston, and I'll give you the address, you have to walk there on foot. Better yet, you got to crawl on your hands and knees. But I'm going to have a bank vault with $100 million in there. Would you do it? Yeah, if they absolutely believed that, they would do whatever they had to do. But the thing is, if I say, well, if you go there, you might have a chance to get it, they're like, forget that. I'm
right.
I know how that plays out. Yeah.
Right.
So people got to work on their belief.
Belief is very important. That goes back to your first point. Solomon said, as a man thinketh, so is he. So if you think you're poor, guess what? you're poor. And there's nothing that can happen circumstantially wise to change that thinking if that's how you're going to operate. And so we really have to have, not pie in the sky thinking. I know you've been reading the Stoics. Whatever you think needs to be rooted in reality, but it can also be rooted in possibility. But I guarantee you, if you've got stinking thinking, you're going to get stinking results.
Yeah, and the possibility, I mean, it's a matter of what you can actually see and believe, because, like, I'm trying to remember who said it, but what a man can believe and conceive, he can achieve. It's absolutely true. But if somebody had told me that I would be where I'm at now and have done the things that I've done and all of this stuff, if they'd have told me that, 25 years ago, I would be like, no, that's not me. There's no way. But over time, it stretches and it grows just like a muscle. And some of that is with the people that you get around. It's the stuff that you put into your mind with, books and stuff that you listen to. Another thing, which is going to probably sound crazy for anybody that's never, really done this, because it sounded really crazy for me. My mentor actually had to read his for me, and then I saw the stuff that actually came to pass before I did it. But it's having an affirmation, like something that you speak to yourself, speak over your life, and it sounds like anybody that has not done it, it sounds very hokey. But I had a conversation with my business partner just the other day, and I said, I wrote this affirmation about our company 2 years ago, and I said, we have done almost every single thing. There's like one thing that's on that list that hasn't been completed. And I've seen this thing happen at least 3 times in my life with different affirmations. And I don't know what it is about the magic. I really think that it's more of that building the belief, because, whatever you believe, that's the way that you act.
Yeah, and I've been using affirmations for years too. And in fact, I write 3 pages of whatever affirmation I'm working on at a time every day. And it is transformative. You begin to accept that in a belief sort of way. And I think you're spot on.
Yeah, I don't want to give anybody the idea that I'm saying, hey, just speak all this crazy stuff and it's just going to happen because you say it. But it's, it's stuff that some of it is believable or somewhat realistic. Some of it's a stretch. But the more that you hear it, I mean, it's just like a kid. If you program him or her and tell them, they're great, they're good at this, they're bad at that, or whatever, or you're terrible at this, it affects their self-image and the way that they see each other. I remember one thing when I was playing basketball, there was a basketball camp that we were at, and I didn't have the most confidence in my shot at the time. I could shoot all right, but I didn't feel like, hey, you shoot like Stephen Curry, which I didn't. But this one guy there, he was so impressed with my 3-point shooting, and he was telling me how great of a shooter I was, and how, if you got a shot, take the 3, man, you're going to knock it down. We depend on you. You got a great 3-point shot. That built me up, and I became a better shooter because of that, because I was constantly hearing it. So, and it works the same way with handling money and stuff. You start telling yourself that you handle money in good ways and you make smart financial decisions and stuff like that, and it happens.
Yeah. In that same vein, I think this is what you're hitting on as well, is that all the verbal affirmation in the world isn't going to work unless your behavior is lining up with that. And that you're doing the stuff. It's really a tandem. If you go around saying all these wonderful things about yourself, but you're not stretching yourself, you're not doing things daily that at that time you fear and hate, but eventually will become average to you, you're not going to achieve either. It's a really important balance.
Yeah, and then you got to learn about the right vehicles, the right financial vehicles. So, if I get in a little 4-cylinder, I'm not going to be able to go 200 miles an hour in that car no matter what. If I find a Ferrari or Lamborghini or a Bugatti or something, I might be able to hit 200 doing that. So you got to be able to also find the right vehicle, the right financial vehicle for you. And for me, that's, businesses and investments. I build businesses, and I invest my money, and I recycle that money and put it back into more investments and continue to grow that over and over and over, and you live off the interest. Or at least that is the end goal. You want to get to where you're not touching the principal at all.
This goes right back to Robert Kiyosaki and Rich Dad Poor Dad, and really elaborated on in the cash flow quadrant. You know, the difference between an employee, self-employed, business owner, and investor. And you definitely don't want to be the first two. People think self-employment is the pinnacle. Actually, it just means you got a really terrible boss who makes you work all the time, and it's you. You want to figure out how to get to business owner, and you want to get to the pinnacle, which is investor, which is clearly where you're at. With a couple of minutes, not even that, a little bit over a minute left, final thoughts, including your website.
Final thoughts. Yeah, for more information, reach out to me, Chris at chriskidd.com. Chriskidd.com is my website. Financial Coach Kid on Instagram. You can Google me, but I'd love to help people as much as possible. I've got some new things that are coming out here pretty soon that the average person will be able to use, as well as people that I will deal with, like personally, like professional athletes, executive, high paid, high net worth individuals that want to really throw gas on the financial fire.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, as always, chriskidd.com. That's KIDD, chriskidd.com. I am Kevin Price. This is The Price of Business. More for you after this.